Remember, everyone, Mr. Perfect Curt Hennig was the greatest wrestler to ever live because nobody beats Mr. Perfect. Nobody. All right, everyone, and welcome to episode 3 of Curt Hennig Was the Best, Changed My Mind. I am your host, Steph. Today, on our Perfect Podcast, we are finally going to hear my first interview with Jesse Ventura on Clubhouse. I would like to thank Jesse Ventura and his son Tyrell, who joins us near the end of the interview. I would also like to thank Tabitha for allowing me to speak to the governor. We do get off the rails a little and talk about other things, but it was mostly about his match with Curt and Larry Hennig. Before we start, you can find this podcast on Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Google Podcasts. Go to patreon.com and in the search field, type in Mr. Perfect is Perfect with the spaces between the words to become a Patreon and support my show. Thank you so much for your support. Okay, let's listen to this and then we'll come back and make comments about it.
Let's get somebody in the office.
Let's bring somebody up right now.
We're having too much fun.
Patiently waiting. I know, right? Mr. Perfect. Hi. There we go. Please introduce yourself and welcome to the governor's office.
I'm so excited. Governor Jesse Ventura, you're my favorite. I loved you in Abraxas.
Wait a minute, Mr. Perfect. How can I be your favorite when I'm looking at your photograph thing here and it's nothing but pictures of my dear old departed friend Curt Hennig?
Well, he is my favorite.
Okay, let's get that straight. You gave yourself away.
I did.
You know, when I looked at the photo and I thought, wait a minute, that's Curt Hennig on there. Wait a minute, that's about 8 Curt Hennigs on there. And then so, Mr. Perfect, you can't come on here and try to soft soap me like that. I'm too smart. Now go ahead. Now go ahead. We had our fun. Go ahead.
Well, I'm also not going to try to tell you that cannabis is worse than alcohol.
There's another vote.
You're not going to tell me. Oh yeah, no. I'm waiting for the person we bring in that can tell me alcohol's better.
Well, that's not going to be me.
No, me neither. I'll tell you that. Not at all.
But I do want to ask you, because
sure.
I think that, well, it's my personal opinion that Curt Hennig was the greatest wrestler to ever live. I just was kind of curious. I have 2 questions, actually.
Sure.
What you thought about working with him, and did he ever rib you? Because I heard he was the king of ribs.
Well, I heard that too, but he never did it to me.
Okay.
And I think that was because I was a generation in front of him.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a bit of respect. I was one of the old guys to Curt.
Right.
See, I wrestled his dad.
Oh, Larry Hennig.
Larry the Axe. And in fact, I'll give you a great story. When Curt first broke in, the first big angle he ever had in wrestling was in Minneapolis, and it was he and his dad against me and Adrian Adonis, the East-West Connection.
Oh, my God.
And the match was so easy because all we had to do was beat the crap out of Curt and let him give his old man a hot tag.
And Larry came in, and of course...
And Larry came in and beat the crap out of me and Adrian and gives us the axe a couple times, and whatever the finish was, we go home. And, but no, Curt was outstanding. He was a young rookie. It might have been one of his first couple matches he ever had, and he was fortunate because he was in the ring with Adrian and I. And Adrian and I knew how to wrestle tag team matches, and we knew how to work. We knew how to wrestle. We were both very good at what we did. And so that's my greatest memory of Curt, because I believe that may have been the only time I ever wrestled him.
Well,
was when we did this huge angle with him and his dad.
Right. I did see a match on, it was back on WWE Network at the time, It was the WWF, and it was you versus Curt, just one-on-one, and of course you won because Curt lost.
Okay, I don't remember it, but I guess it happened, but I'll take your word for it. You got to remember, in those days of wrestling, man, you wrestled over 250 times, probably, no, more than that. You'd wrestle literally 340 matches a year.
Right.
So remembering one becomes impossible almost. I do remember some, like selling out Madison Square Garden with Bob Backlund. Mm-hmm. I remember wrestling Bruno, the legendary Bruno Sammartino, because of who he was, and there's others, and Curt. The main thing I remember about Curt was that match with him and his old man, because it was fun. And Bobby Heenan could never figure out. He'd go, how can you go in the ring and just give yourself up to Larry Hennig like that? I said, I'll tell you why, Bobby, because he's never once given me a potato. I said, Larry looks like he's killing me, but I said, he's never once even jarred me up that bad. That's how good he was when he delivered the axe. And that's who you want in there, But no, my greatest memory of Curt Hennig was having that rookie match with him and his dad against me and Adrian. What was your other question then?
So my other question was, did he ever rib you? But
I don't think so, because, like I said, I was a generation above him, and then when he came to the WWF as Mr. Perfect. I was already upstairs doing the broadcasting, which I was off the road then. All I did was go to TV, and I would go to pay-per-views, and I retired from the ring quietly. I did it with no fanfare or anything like that. And I just made a quiet, I shouldn't say it was quiet, but I made a transition from the ring to the broadcasting. And when Curt got there, I was solely broadcasting then.
Yeah, you would always say whenever he would come out, oh, here comes Mr. Perfect. And I'd like to say hi to my friends in Minneapolis. You would mention Tyrell, Teresa, and I'm guessing your daughter. Who's Jeremiah, though?
Oh, Jeremiah's my nephew.
Oh, nephew. I thought it was a dog. I was like, wait, he only has 2 kids.
No. He's my nephew.
Okay. But yeah, I the last question I have, and thank you for everything. And
sure.
I loved you in Abraxas. I know, not a lot of people, I guess, know about that movie.
Yeah, it was a little independent. It was a little independent that we shot up in Canada. I did it with Rose Ruby Productions, and it was a fun film to make with some interesting people in it. It was kind of a takeoff of the Terminator. Now, when I look back on it, I didn't see it as such at the time. But when I look at it now, it was kind of a Terminator type film at that time. 2 guys coming down from, outer space and doing what they did. But certainly was fun to shoot, and it was a rugged shoot because it got so cold up there when we shot it that, oh my God, the weather turned. We started off shooting with no snow on the ground, and a week later we had 1.5 feet.
Oh my gosh.
And then they had to try to figure out, how do we explain this in the film? Because we were shooting north of Toronto, I don't know, Tyrell's here now if they bring him up. Tyrell will remember, because that was my son's first acting job, I think.
Oh, I didn't see him.
Oh yeah, he's the bully kid in the playground.
Oh my gosh, wow.
Sorry if it's a little loud tonight.
Yeah, there you go, Ty. Welcome aboard. No, Mr. Perfect's asking me about Abraxas, and I was saying I think that was your first acting job. I got you, and that was one of the reasons I did it, because it was an independent in Canada, and they're flexible enough to cast my son in a film with me.
I played a schoolyard bully who picked on a kid with telekinetic powers, and he waylaid me pretty bad at the end, if I believe I'm correct on that.
Yeah,
actually, he didn't waylay you, Ty. He used telekinetic kinetic powers to get you to actually wet your pants.
I know.
Yeah.
I
I'm so
wet my
glad your dad
pants,
clarified that.
And then, I wet my pants, and then he threw me into a bathroom stall, and that was my screen debut.
Yep,
And he
there
didn't
you go.
say a word.
Or whatever it was. Yeah.
He
But
didn't
I'll
have
tell
to
you-
say a word.
I'll tell you what, Ty, you did a great job, and I would have put you up for an Academy Award personally.
Same.
Yeah, thank you for saying that, Dad.
I'm
Yes,
going to go back and look at that
I
now.
played a school bully really well, complete with a really great hockey hair. I had a good mullet going on that one.
Hey, those are
that
coming
was a good
back
time.
in style. Mullets are coming back, so
Yes.
you never know.
Yes, they are, but now I don't have the hair for that anymore.
I just remember the scene where you walk in, Jesse, and you see the girl in the shower, and you're just like, whoa, and then you like walk out, and the thing on your arm goes, you're getting emotional, Braxis, and you go, you only speak what's spoken to. That's like my favorite line, Jesse.
You could quote me anything from that film, and I have to believe you.
Well, my greatest honor that came from that.
I don't remember a line that I did in it today. I don't think.
Honestly, the greatest honor that I ever was bestowed on that film was with the guys who used to do Mystery Science Theater. I think they did something called Riff Tracks, and they did a riff track on it where they kind of did commentary over the film and then like made jokes and cracked jokes and all that kind of stuff. And that was one of the best parts about being in that movie. Afterwards.
No kidding. I didn't know that happened. Well, what the heck? You do things, and they pay you to do them, and you do it's like Michael Caine said once. The great Michael Caine, the actor. He said, "Look, I do any role. The only thing I can do it is to the best of my ability. I can't guarantee the film will be good.
Right.
I can only do my part to the best of my ability." And
do you think Michael Caine regretted that when he signed on to do Jaws 4 and then missed? I think he missed like the Academy Awards or something like that when he was nominated for another movie, and then because he was off filming Jaws 4 down in the Bahamas or something like that.
Well, I'll put it to you this way. I bet his paycheck was bigger doing Jaws 4 than it was showing up at the Academy Award.
True.
More likely, yeah.
Very true. Very, very true.
And I think that was probably the motivating factor for Michael.
Oh, I can imagine.
Yeah,
Plus, the free,
You got to remember, people. You can't. Some things you have to do for a paycheck. You got to feed your family, and you can't. Just simply do every part that you want to do. You now and then you got to, and it's called stretching your acting ability, right, Ty?
Oh, without a doubt. And then, hey, I mean, me and Tab have been in the film industry, and hey, ain't nothing better than getting paid to go to the Bahamas for a little while, right, Tab?
Right?
Sure. Absolutely.
Like, free trip.
Yeah, even if it's Jaws, well, how many Rockies have they done?
Oh, and they're still doing them. Now they have Creed 2, or they had Creed 2.
When are they going to do the one where Rocky's in heaven?
What's the hope?
And he's like, look, you know why I say that? Because lately I've seen a couple of them. God, on the TV they've had those old Sinbad films.
Oh, yeah? The black and white ones?
Oh, like the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad and Sinbad and the Tiger or something. They got all different people playing Sinbad, but they always have the films where the gods up in the sky are looking down at what's going on with the people down here. And that's what they'll do with Rocky, see?
Oh, my God's looking down on him, I guess.
Yeah, he'll be up in heaven, and then they'll bring him back somehow.
I'll bring him back to fight Lucifer in a boxing ring.
Well,
Well,
Why,
If I can ask you one more question.
you think Sylvester's ego would step in the way or get in the way if that was legit? Of course he'd do it. Only he could.
Stephanie had one more
Can I
question
just-
real quick. What was your question, Stephanie?
So one last question is, Governor, are you going to go back on Jimmy Dore show anytime soon? I'm actually watching his live show on my pad here.
I don't know. Right now, the only thing I'm doing is my show on RT, which is on, every Friday night and through
Which
the
I
weekend.
love.
on RT, thank you. And then I'm doing this 2 nights a week. Right now, that is all that I am doing. And I'm happy doing this right now. And then, no, I have other projects that don't require me right now to be out in front media-wise. They will later, possibly, but not at this moment. But right now I'm doing those 2 things. I am going to do a radio shot this Friday. I'll be on like 150 stations throughout the country because they called up and said that they feel they need my voice out there and it's not being heard.
I agree. I think you should also run for president. Come on, everybody. You should run for president. Jesse, we need you.
You know, that, like I said, I have no infrastructure to do that, so that would require an astronomical thing to happen on the internet. But it could, because that's how crazy and powerful the internet is today. You can never, I'll put it this way, the thing I'm learning, being very ignorant of the internet, is you can never underestimate the internet.
That's true.
Don't dare to underestimate what can happen on the internet and the impact that things on the internet can have now. Unfortunately, they don't have them on me personally because I don't do the internet except for this.
I heard in the interview, the last interview that Curt Hennig ever did, he said that he was asked, did he vote for you as governor? He said, yeah, are you kidding? I'm the one who told him to do it. I was like, I think that if Curt was still alive, I think he would definitely vote for you for president, and I know I would too.
Oh, thank you, and I know Curt would too, and that doesn't surprise me that Curt, but you got to remember something else about those wrestlers. They're first in line to take credit for anything. It's in their nature.
Thank you so much for joining.
There may be 15 other wrestlers that are going to vie with Curt on saying, I'm the one that told him to do that.
Thank you so much, Governor.
Sure, thank you.
Guys.
There's somebody else up here.
Okay, welcome back, guys. So, let's start off with the beginning of the interview. I will warn you that I literally was so nervous. That's why there's like this, like kind of nervous giggle at the start of this interview, and that's because like I was just like the realization of, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the Jesse Ventura. You know, someone I had admired along with Curt, but, I mean, it would be like the realization like, oh my gosh, I'm talking to, you know, for example, if I had ever met Curt, I'm talking to Curt Hennig, you know, it would be like that realization, like you're like stunned for like a second. I think more towards the end of the interview, I was starting to feel a little more comfortable. So, like, I only laughed because Jesse made me laugh, and it wasn't like that nervous, like, you know, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the Jesse Ventura. So, the beginning of the interview, I just wanted to get, you know, like, if Jesse had ever sort of remembered facing Curt. He does not remember the 1981 match between him and Curt where Curt lost. And I remember being on when this was before WWE had gone to Peacock. I watched a whole bunch of I think it was I don't want to say it was primetime wrestling because that doesn't sound right, but it was wrestling from 1981. And it was on Curt's profile. They got like a little profile for him and everything. And they had several wrestling matches from the AWA. And there were a couple with his father that I remember seeing. Because it was like a father-son combination kind of thing. Where they had just like, I guess they had that as one of the many, many categories that you could look up and see. But I do remember seeing, it was just one of the shows, I guess, back on the WWF, and it was Curt versus Jesse. And I often wonder if Jesse just said to him, you know, hey, great job, kid, you know, that kind of thing. Because Curt was sort of, you know, he'd just gotten into wrestling in 1980. So, he would at least have been in the business for, I don't know, close to a year. So, at the time, but, so, those matches, unfortunately, I had to look up because, like I said, I didn't come till 86. So, any of the matches in 1980 and 1981, 82, 83, 84, and 85 even, I had to look up on YouTube. So, they do have, I believe it was, the very beginning of like May 1982 when Curt went into Portland. And it was like that interview with him and his dad. They were talking about the Army, and I thought they meant like all you can be Army. No, this is something with Buddy Rose and I'm trying to think of the other guy's name. I'd have to think about it for a second. But it was a couple of feuds where they would just have like these 2 out of 3 falls matches with Buddy Rose and the other gentleman whose name I can't think of right now. Rip Oliver. I know I would figure that one out eventually. But yeah, I have all the way back to 82. You know, and since then, when they took WWE Network and they sort of moved it over to Peacock, I haven't been able to find those old time matches. Now they do have some AWA matches and stuff, but I think this was the WWF, so this would have been Vince Sr. Who did these matches and stuff. But I think the match that Jesse was talking about with him and Adrian Adonis against Larry Hennig and Curt Hennig was probably back in 1980. So, like, I was -6. Because I didn't come till 86. But you could probably look for that match on YouTube or something. But it's the only match that Jesse seemed to remember. The other one in 81, he probably just didn't remember because it was like I want to say it was like almost like a WWF Superstars for maybe 1981, but I don't know how far Superstars goes back. But it was something similar to that I got to see, you know, a very young Curt Hennig versus Jesse Ventura. And let me just say, going all the way back to 1981, Curt didn't win a lot of matches. You know, he might have gone to the WWF and he was Mr. Perfect, and then he had that perfect streak for like a year and a half. But unfortunately, he didn't win a lot of matches back in 81. Maybe that's why he sort of went to Portland. I'm not really sure, like, why he made that switch. But, I mean, his dad and him had all kinds of matches. You know, it was always 2 out of 3 falls. And it was always him and Rip Oliver. And I remember the one Matt Bourne used to, got into one of them. Matt Bourne, of course, everyone knows, was Doink, the clown, in, I think, 92, 93. Yeah, he would, if, like, Rip Oliver or something said he couldn't wrestle or whatever, Matt Bourne would go in there and say, well, I'm going to wrestle for, you know, Rip Oliver or whatever. This person's hurt, so I'm going to wrestle for that person. And the referee would go, absolutely not. And some of those old matches in Portland that Curt was in, I found out when an Iranian death match was. I'm like, I've never even heard of this. What is an Iranian death match? I'm sure the person who wrestled wasn't even Iranian. You know what I mean? But I found out what it was, And I was just like kind of shocked. I'm like, wait, what? But you see these matches for like the first time and I'm just like, okay, here we go. Jim Cornette talks about the coal miners glove on a pole match. And Curt did one of those. I think it was 83 or 84. I can't remember. I think it was 83. Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine Curt doing one like later on, I think the last match he ever had was a axe on a pole match or something on a pole match, but it wasn't a glove or anything. And that was in TNA. I don't think Curt liked TNA too much. But yeah, like watching him go through Portland and then he went over to the AWA, which I thought was a subsidiary of maybe AWA. Something about maybe Vern had gotten AWA or acquired it. But it's so, I won't say it's weird kind of like to see his old matches because he's so, like, if you see him in the ring, he has like this cowboy outfit going on, and it's because Curt liked country music. And I didn't know that. I was like, oh, I love country music. Are you kidding me? Of course, I like the country that I grew up with. I'm sure Curt would say, well, I like the country I grew up with. And that's why I think his cowboy thing, when he did the Rap Is Crap in 99, I really think he just poured it on, and it's because he just loves country music. But the one thing I love about, watching Curt's matches is he didn't have that singlet. He had just regular tights on. And it's weird how, like, he transitioned. Like, all of a sudden, just one day, he puts on a singlet, and it's like, whoa. And then he was always known for that. But I would like to do some, an episode maybe on Larry Hennig. Just, I think it's something Curt would want me to do. If he's looking down from wherever he is, or he's with us, I think that, his spirit would know that I'm doing an episode to his dad, and I think that would make him feel better. And then of course I want to do one of Rick Rude, who was Curt's best friend, and he was a good wrestler. I'll give Rick Rude that. He was an excellent wrestler. I just think that Curt was a little better. But I don't think Rick Rude's father was a boxer. I don't know. Someone might want to fact check me on that. But he wasn't a wrestler. So he wasn't Larry Hennig, But I did hear on one of the WCW episodes they do talk about the fact that Rick Rude's father and Curt's father were good friends. So, well, there you go. So I'm sure he knew his father. It's just, and that's why him and Curt were friends for the longest time. There is, I would like to do an episode dedicated to the SummerSlam episode with Curt and Brett, because it was so significant in both Brett's career and Curt's career, because Curt was kind of like, I don't want to say going on the shelf, but like he was hurt. And so he was kind of passing the torch to Brett. And like I said, in Brett's book, he talks about, if it wasn't for this, it wasn't for that. If it wasn't for Curt, this wouldn't have happened. If it wasn't for Curt, that wouldn't have happened. And so he praised Curt up and down. It was Curt's idea for Brett to pull off his singlet and hold it up as a trophy. How many heel people do you know would do that for someone else? And Curt wrestled his ass off in that match. Like I said, that's a really hard match for me to watch, because not a lot of people know that he was hurt, but knowing that he's hurt, I just kind of cringe every minute. It's like, oh boy. So, I do plan on doing the second interview with Jesse Ventura. It's a little shorter than this one was. This one was kind of like, I was really nervous and I was the first one up, where the second interview was, I wasn't so nervous and I was the last one to come up. But the second interview with Jesse Ventura was more of, I was just trying to get questions in. So I was like trying to, fast, do the interview really, really quickly. So, in the second interview we talk about, Jesse finally tells me what, bear hunting with a switch is. And this, honestly, like I said in another episode, it came from Larry Hennig, standing there in 1982, the interview I saw with them, with him and Curt standing right next to him. And what the funniest part was, like, Curt never even cracked a smile. He literally, I would have been falling on the floor laughing when Larry Hennig said, "Oh, I was up in Minnesota bear hunting with a switch." Wait, what? I would have been like dumbfounded for a second, and then I would have been rolling on the floor laughing, going, "What is bear hunting with a switch?" Can you elaborate on this, please? But in the second interview, I'm glad that I got to talk to Jesse. And honestly, it was from Sunday, March 27th, it was right before Curt's birthday. So I actually told Jesse, he was going to be 64 if he had lived today. And like I said, the second interview, we kind of talk about, Curt's funeral and stuff. And I actually had someone, a fan of this podcast, ask me, have I been to Curt's gravesite? And I have not. It is on my to-do list. I would love to go there. However, I think I would need someone else to be with me because I probably would bawl my eyes out. I did tell this fan that I would probably need a shoulder to cry on, because the realization that he's gone would just hit me like a ton of bricks. And I would need that, like, he was my favorite wrestler and he was the best wrestler to ever live, in my opinion. So it would take me like that culture shock for a second when I would see his name there. It's going to be a tough road to hoe. But I would still do it. I would still do it because I believe I would owe it to Curt to at least go say hello in my own way. Whatever gets you through the night. That's what John Lennon said. Whatever gets you through the night. And whatever you believe is fine. You can believe he's not here, though I think his son Joe would disagree with you. It was an interview that I had watched one time of Joe saying that his dad was still here. That's marvelous. I love that, I like, something within me would like a little hope in that, Curt's still around and he's still watching over us, that kind of thing. So, so on to the interview, the comments, like I said, we do kind of stray a little bit. Once we talk about the match with him and Adrian, like I said, the only reason I know who Adrian Adonis is because of Roddy Piper. And I was actually listening to a Stone Cold podcast a little while back. And everybody's got a podcast now. I think Curt would have a podcast too. I think it would be the best damn podcast ever, it would be the perfect podcast. I'd probably be calling up, "Hey Curt, I love you." No. I'd probably be like, "I'm your biggest fan. Can I have your autograph?" But I do think that something remains. It's just something that science can't explain, and something remains. Maybe you don't feel that way. That's absolutely fine. But I just think something is not done for Curt, and I do think he's, he probably watches over us. Joe said that he felt his presence at his matches, so I think something remains. Something's out there that we don't understand. So anyway, we do talk about the match with Adrian Adonis and with Jesse, and I also do pose the question if Jesse was ever ribbed, because as everyone knows, Curt was the king of ribs, and I do believe that there probably was a lot of respect there from Curt to Jesse, because Jesse, even though Jesse would probably be about 7 years older than Curt, I still think there's a lot of, respect there, because he respected who his dad fought. So you're talking like Jesse and Vern Gagne and all the people that Larry Hennig fought, whoever that might be, and all the great wrestlers that he fought. But, and I love how Jesse talks about, oh, well, all we had to do was beat the shit out of Curt, and, his father gave the hot tag. And then Larry Hennig would kind of, come in and win the match and beat up Adrian and beat up Jesse. Oh, you want to beat on my son? No, I don't think so. So, Larry took out his frustrations and started wailing back on Adrian Adonis and Jesse Ventura. I can so see it. Even though I've never seen this match, I don't know what this match is all about. I could probably find it on YouTube somewhere, but I'm telling you, it probably was a great match. Even though I didn't see it, because, I haven't seen any. The only match I saw with Jesse Ventura and Adrian Adonis, I think, was against Vern Gagne and Mad Dog Vachon. And it was in 1980 or 79, I think. It was either 79 or 80. I can't really remember. But, I had never seen Vern Gagne wrestle because, he was way before my time. But, those old matches that they have on YouTube are so nice to see, because a lot of us weren't alive when those, there were some of us who were, but a lot of us were not. The newer generation, I should say. There's even people I talk to, and they're like, yeah, I wasn't born till 1999. I'm like, oh boy. Then you wouldn't remember any of the wrestling that I grew up with, which was the best wrestling. I can't tell you how funny it is that I can't even put NWO for life into a YouTube comment section because they think I'm talking about a real NWO. I'm like, no, the NWO from WCW. It's a pro wrestling reference. So that's, it's like, watch wrestling, watch 90s wrestling, and you're gonna see what we're talking about. There is no such thing as an NWO. The NWO died whenever WCW was bought out. So we're talking, the NWO hasn't existed for, since 2001. And I was 15 in 2001, so there you go. So anyway, we'll go off on tangents here. From time to time we'll go off on some tangents, but the majority of the interview was just trying to me trying to get to the root of, Jesse's experience with Curt, and he admits there wasn't a lot there when he came in the WWF as Mr. Perfect. Jesse had already quit wrestling, and he was commentating for him. And then I kind of said, okay, well, yeah, you would always say, here comes Mr. Perfect. And then he would mention his wife, son, daughter. But who was Jeremiah? I thought it was a dog. And here it's his nephew. He would do that on occasion. It seemed like every time Curt would come out for whatever pay-per-views or whatever. So there was that, and then, I mentioned Abraxas because I am a huge fan of that movie. So I think it was at least 10 to 15 years ago. I had been watching old wrestling. So I'm talking like 1990, WrestleMania 6, which was in Canada, if I remember correctly. And it was Curt versus, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, where Lanny, who was also known as the Genius, got his hair cut again. Like, he had already gotten his hair cut at the Royal Rumble by Brutus. And, you know, Curt tried to, he intervened and he hit Brutus with a chair over and over and over again. And it just, I've seen so many interviews and stuff with that. Curt talking about, you know, don't get in my business, blah, blah, blah. I always wondered why they called Lanny the Genius. What made him the genius? How was he super smart? Did he go to Yale? No one could ever answer that for me. So, other than he was Randy Savage's little brother. But anyway, I believe it was WrestleMania 6 that I saw a t-shirt on Jesse Ventura that said Abraxas on it. And he said, I want to promote my new movie, Abraxas. Well, I had never seen Abraxas, so I went and looked it up. And they had it on YouTube at the time. And I'll be darned, it was a great movie. It was a darn good movie because I guess he's right. It's kind of like the Terminator, but it's more like they're space policemen. And the one goes rogue because he's, I don't know, lived for over 1,000 years or whatever. Maybe it was 10,000. I think it was 1,000 though. Something like that. But he goes rogue, and all you know is he goes down and gets this woman pregnant, and she ends up having a kid that doesn't talk. And also Jim Belushi is in it, and I did not know at the time because I didn't remember like all the scenes, but Tyrell was in it. I had to actually go back and look, and yes, it is Tyrell Ventura who was the bully in that movie. So I actually had to go back and look and make sure it was him. And, yeah, that was Tyrell's first acting job. And it was a good one, too. He did pretty excellent. So, but I like that movie because, it does have a little, you know, I'm a chick, you know, so of course a little romance never hurt anybody, right? But the gist of the movie is that this guy comes back for this kid because he's gonna release some kind of code that will will wipe all planets of life or something, or destroy the universe, I guess. It's always something about destroying the universe or destroying the world or something. So, I honestly think it was a good movie. I don't know. I think you could probably still find it on YouTube. So if you're interested in learning or watching this movie, you know, I talk about my favorite line, and Jesse doesn't remember any of those lines. I like learning the lines of movies. I always have. So, like, there are some of my favorite movies, and I talk about this on Wednesday night after we talk to Jesse. You can go into a room with Tyrell and just talk about movies and stuff. And I've done that plenty of times with him. He's such a cool dude. They're both very cool, but Tyrell is like super, super cool. And you just throw a name of a movie out and he's like, oh, you watched that? And I'm like, oh yeah. But anyway, like I said, we do get off topic a little bit. I ask him about Jimmy Dore because I do love Jimmy Dore. I love Jimmy's, take on things. And I just, if it wasn't for, Jesse Ventura, I wouldn't know who Jimmy Dore is. And it just so happened that when Jesse had his RT show, RT America show, The World According to Jesse, which I watched every Friday. I loved it. I love that show. Unless Jesse would go for like his 6-month Leons in Mexico and get off the grid, you know. Jesse was big for doing that. Well, it was one of these hiatuses that Jimmy Dore was actually doing his show. And I just remember thinking, who is this person? Have I seen this person before? I hadn't really remembered seeing Jimmy Dore anywhere other than, you know, on Jesse's show, and he took over for Jesse when Jesse would go to Mexico and get off the grid. Because, you know, that's Jesse's thing. He likes to get off the grid, and he doesn't have a cell phone. He says his wife Teresa has a cell phone. I think there was also a comment made about, you know, weed being better than alcohol. You know, I don't judge. So, you know, go ahead and smoke them if you want to, drink alcohol if you want to. I am not that person that is going to sit here and judge people. So you do you, and I'll be over here. You know, I'm still getting over a cold, for heaven's sake. But yeah, if it wasn't for Jesse Ventura, I wouldn't know who Jimmy Dore is. And I absolutely love Jimmy Dore. I love his show. I love his take on things, like I said. And if it just wasn't for that time, like I had watched, you know, Jesse's show, I had gone back into the archives of the show. And of course you can't get it on YouTube anymore because it's just a mess. Okay, I almost wanted to boycott YouTube because it's just, you know, Jesse didn't do anything wrong. You know, he had a show on something that gave him free speech, and he had every right to state his opinion. So I don't think it should have been taken down, because that's just not fair. And I loved Jesse's show. So anyway, like I said, if it wasn't for Jesse, I wouldn't know who Jimmy Dore is. And right now, I am all on board with the Jimmy Dore fan club. I love Jimmy Dore, and that's why I wanted to know if he was going to, because I think Jesse had gone on his show a couple times previously. So I wanted to know if maybe he would go back on again, because I know Jimmy would just love to have Jesse Ventura on his show. And you know how many times in this chat rooms of Jimmy Dore, in the chat rooms, I've seen like, oh, Jesse Ventura 2024 and that kind of thing. And we do get into that. We get into talking about, you know, he should run for president. I absolutely agree. Jesse Ventura should run for president. And I know for a fact that if Curt Hennig were still alive, I do think Curt would vote for him. No, I don't think, I know he would, because he voted for him when he was governor. Curt says that in the interview, very, you know, loud and proud. You know, the guy says, "Did you vote for Jesse Ventura?" He goes, "Are you kidding? Who do you think gave him the idea to run?" And they all laugh about it. So I definitely, at the end, I was just like, you know, I could so see Curt doing this. That's why I say at the end, you know, if Curt was still alive, I know he would vote for Jesse as president, because he says something to the effect of, you know, he wasn't surprised that Jesse was taking his fame into politics, and that, you know, maybe wrestling and politics go together. And then he was talking about Tom Zank, and I've seen Tom Zank. I honestly wasn't impressed. I'm sorry, all you Tom Zank fans out there, but sorry. I was not really impressed with Tom Zank. I did not like the guy. You know, he may be a great wrestler, but sorry. He wasn't as good as Curt, and in my eyes, no one is. So, no one ever will be. I mean, that's why we have this podcast, right? It's to, it's to say that, Curt was the best, and he is. Or was. He is the best wrestler to ever live. There is a time in there where at the beginning, I think because I was so nervous, I literally blurted out that, yes, Jesse is my favorite commentator. I don't think I said that. I just think, oh, you're my favorite. And he took it to mean, well, wait a second. You have Curt Hennig on your profile picture. So how can I be your favorite if you like Curt Hennig? Like I said, I wasn't trying to discourage anything or try to, I don't know how to explain it, but I wasn't trying to be pedantic. I was just trying to, yeah, I do like Jesse. I have liked Jesse. I've liked Jesse ever since I heard him commentate WrestleMania 6. I love it when he just yells at people. Like at, I think it was, Royal Rumble, I want to say 1989. The match between the Warrior and Rick Rude, it wasn't really a match. It was a pose down. That match, I was not a big Warrior fan. I didn't really like Rick Rude either, but I have to say, Rick shouldn't be embarrassed about anything. I think he had a better body than the Warrior, even if the Warrior was kind of jacked up. I think that Rick Rude could have out-wrestled him, and he did. He did out-wrestle him. So, and there's a story that Brett tells about that, actually, that at SummerSlam 1990, I guess the Warrior had made Rick Rude very mad. And he said, if you clothesline me one more time, I'm going to rip your arm off and beat you with it. And Brett said the Warrior was very apologetic about it. So they went out and celebrated Brett's birthday. It had to be before SummerSlam because Brett's birthday is in July. So it definitely had to be before SummerSlam 1990. But I do think that, and honestly, this is my take, and it's a funny take, but I always say this. I think the guy who won the pose down wasn't even in it. And that was Curt Hennig. I do think Curt had a great body, and had nothing to be ashamed of. Trust me, Curt could bench press me and not even break a sweat, I'm sure. So, it's just one of those things that, I was 3 in 89. So, I don't even remember this match. The only match I really remember, like I said, was WrestleMania 7, and that was Liz and Randy, when Liz and Randy got married. So, or got back together, so to speak. But anyway, but yeah, if it wasn't, I would love for Jesse, since he lost his show, I would love for Jesse to go back on Jimmy Dore. I think that would be great. I just don't think that, that's probably going to happen. I think Jesse's kind of set in his ways and he likes what he's doing. Although I wish that Jesse would get his voice out there more. That's why when he mentioned the radio spot, that I kind of was like, yeah, go do it. I agree, And like I said, I do think that if Curt was around, I definitely think he'd be like, yeah, Jesse, you need to run for president. You definitely need to run for president because, this stuff isn't working anymore and people are just, they're losing their minds. Let's put it that way. And sometimes I'd like to think that Curt was, he probably voted for Jesse because I'm sure they had the same political ideals. So I could see Curt, saying, well, we share the same ideals, so of course I want to vote for you. That kind of thing. I don't know what Curt's ideals were because I didn't really know him. However, like I said, if you're going to vote for Jesse Ventura, I think, as governor, I think you kind of share the same ideals as he does. And it's just one of those things, But like I said, I had a great interview and I loved it. Like I said, there's a couple of nervous laughs there in the beginning because I was just so nervous. And I kind of talked really fast because, again, I was really nervous and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm talking to the Jesse Ventura. And for me, it's my aunt met Stone Cold, but that's my aunt. That's not me. I didn't meet Stone Cold in person or whatever. But I definitely would have been awestruck if I had met Jesse face to face. And also if I met Curt face to face. I think they would be like, oh boy, I'm talking to the best wrestler to ever live. Or greatest wrestler to ever live. Holy cow. And it would kind of be culture shock for me because I just would be in awe and be like, wow, that's really cool. So, I hope you enjoyed the interview. And like I said, I would like to thank Tabitha because she is the one who allowed me to come up that night, for the first interview. And I was super excited to talk to Jesse Ventura about Curt. And I wasn't trying to soapbox anybody. I just kind of was nervous at the beginning and just blurted it out oh, you're my favorite. But yes, Curt was my all-time favorite. And in the second interview, I kind of am talking fast because I'm trying to get all my questions out. I wasn't really nervous about talking to Jesse the second time because I talked to his son Tyrell for so many weeks. I did 5 weeks in a row where literally I was talking to Tyrell about movies. And the one thing I didn't want to bring up was Hulk Hogan. Not to Jesse Ventura. I talked to Tyrell about him, and that's why I was I'm very hesitant, to talk about Hulk Hogan to your dad. So it's one thing I would never bring up. It's just not something I would feel comfortable talking about in front of Jesse Ventura, because if you don't know, there's a story that Hulk Hogan ratted Jesse out when Jesse tried to unionize the wrestlers. So, I will not be talking to or about Hulk Hogan or Hulk Hogan's movies to Jesse Ventura. Not going to do it. No. It just, in my opinion, no. I'm not going to get Jesse upset with me. Even if he's cool about it right now, I just don't want to take that chance. So, but I had a great time talking to both Tyrell and Tabitha and also talking to Jesse. And I want to thank all three of them for allowing me to come up and do this. And I will get the second interview out. Like I said, the second interview is a little shorter because I was the last one to come on and they wanted to end the show. So, and it was right before Curt's birthday, and I think Tyrell kind of took pity on me. He kind of knew I was going to say something about Curt, because he did say, oh yeah, it is Curt's birthday tomorrow, and it would have been March 8th, or March 28th, when the episode would have, it was on the 27th that I got the interview. And I had planned on using that, but I thought, well, I haven't gotten the first interview with Jesse out first, so I kind of have to wait for the second interview. But the second interview is more about Curt and Curt's birthday, and he would have been 64 this year, and it's more in depth about, what was it like to be, working with Larry Hennig. That kind of thing. So I And he honestly, he shocked me actually when Jesse in the second interview says, you know, if I could tell Curt one thing, and why would I tell him this? He said, you know, that Curt was great. Curt was the best. And he deserved every penny of what he earned in wrestling because he was a great wrestler. And I was just like, wow, I wish we could tell, you know, I wish we could say that to Curt to his face. You know, like, hey, Curt, you do know there's people out there that think you are the best and you deserved every penny of what you earned money-wise because you were the greatest. That is your hard-earned money and you earned it and you deserved every penny. So, again, guys, I'm sorry this is short, but it is 12:03 Eastern time, and boy, I'll tell you what, I'm getting real tired here. But I hope you enjoyed this episode as much as I enjoyed talking to Jesse Ventura. Like I said, you can hear that nervousness in there, but by the end of the interview, I think I was feeling pretty good, you know, like not as nervous. But I think if I had interviewed anyone other than Jesse, I probably would have been like super duper nervous. Like I wasn't as nervous sending an email to Jim Cornette because that's an email and you don't really get to talk to Jim Cornette. Like, you know, not like a face-to-face thing with Jesse, but it was like I actually got to physically talk to him, hear his physical voice, and he got to hear mine, whereas Jim Cornette kind of read an email and didn't get to hear my voice. Not that my voice is anything to hear, but it would have been nice if I could have like interviewed Jim Cornette, you know, straight through, kind of like I did with Jesse both times. So I'm actually trying to get feelers out to see if I can talk to Jeff Jarrett, kind of get his take on Curt Hennig. And I only say that because he did talk about Curt briefly, and it was because Curt was in the Four Horsemen. And of course Jeff Jarrett was in the Four Horsemen before Curt was in. And everybody remembers the time when Curt slammed the door on Ric Flair's head and, you know, whatever that entailed afterwards. It was a great heel turn. It was a great heel turn. And even if you ask Rick himself, Rick said, yeah, it was great. You know, they wanted to recreate something from the 80s that he had done to Kerry Von Erich, slamming the cage door on Kerry's face. So it was kind of like a recreation of that, and I think Curt did it beautifully. And that's when he turned to the NWO. Everyone knows that, if you watched wrestling in '97. So I just think that I think Curt was underrated because he should have been the WWF champion, I think. And he should have been every champion. Like, he should have been WWF, he should have been WCW. I mean, like I said, I'm Curt's biggest fan. As you couldn't tell by the podcast name. And I love the artwork that they did for Jim Cornette's. It's, I didn't know that was from Steven Crowder. I personally don't like Steven Crowder. But I just love the artwork that was done. It's kind of Curt sitting there with his leg up on, you know, he's drinking coffee and stuff. And I love it. It was so good. So, but I'm very excited to say that I do have a Patreon now. There's only 2 levels that you can subscribe to. A $3 one where I will give you shout outs. If you like what you hear, you can go on the patreon.com and look for Mr. Perfect is Perfect, which is also the name of my YouTube channel, where I will post all of my episodes if you are interested in that too. But like I said, if you're interested in supporting the show, you can go to patreon.com and in the search field, Mr. Perfect is Perfect with all of the spaces in between. and you can go ahead and support the show. It's $3 and $6. And like I said, I'm going to start doing some shout outs, at the end of every episode. So like I said, if you like what you hear, please, please, please support the show. Go to patreon.com. Mr. Perfect is perfect in the search field. Also, you can subscribe to anywhere you hear this podcast: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and even Amazon Music. So I really, really appreciate you guys listening. I know my podcast has blown up in the last month and a half, and it's been amazing. It's been overwhelming. I'm just so pleased that so many of you want to hear what I have to say about Curt, because he was the best. Like him or hate him, he was the best. Okay. So like I said, if you would want to go to Patreon, patreon.com, Mr. Perfect is perfect. And we will see you again on episode 4 of Curt Hennig was the best. Changed my mind. All right. See you, everybody.